Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the first ever Data Champions Online Insurance. My name is Maisa Roberts. I'm a conference director and content producer here at Unum, and I'm delighted to be hosting today's event. Welcome back to those of you who joined us yesterday, and to the new faces joining us for the first time. Thank you for being here. We have another action-packed day ahead, and before we jump into today's sessions, I wanted to take a brief moment for a few housekeeping announcements. First, throughout the entire event, you have the chance to win a set of free Apple AirPods. All you need to do is share a selfie of yourself tuned into today's session on LinkedIn using the hashtag DataChampionsOnline. We'll select a winner at random, and we'll be in touch about how to claim your prize. Again, simply post a selfie of you enjoying today's sessions on LinkedIn using the hashtag DataChampionsOnline for a chance to win. Now, we know that interaction is important to you all. So throughout the entire event, each session has time allocated for our expert speakers to answer your questions. Using the Q&A box below, please submit your most pressing questions as soon as they come up, and we'll do our best to get as many answered as possible at the end. In the unlikely event that you encounter any technical issues during the session, please first refresh your browser and re-log into the system. If that doesn't work, simply drop the team a message in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to help. Finally, you also notice an array of downloadable content below, including our global online and in-person events calendar. Please download as many items as you wish to read in your own time. Now, moving on to our first session, I am delighted to welcome Prashant Natarajan, Director of Data Science and Analytics at Unum Insurance Group, responsible for analytics, data science, NLP, and AI application. Prashant has previously worked for Deloitte Australia, H20 AI, and Oracle. He's a best-selling author on data, BI, and AI, and he has a book coming out later this year on demystifying AI for the enterprise. He's an advisor at Stanford University, the Council for Affordable Health Coverage, and the Pistoia Alliance. In this session, Prashant will be discussing designing and building omni-channel communication strategies to establish competitive advantage and taking advantage of current and historical data, among other things. It promises to be a brilliant session, so again, please do send in your questions throughout. And with that, I'll step aside and hand things over to Prashant. Thank you again for joining us, and welcome to our virtual stage, Prashant.
Thank you, Maisa. I almost couldn't recognize myself with that awesome introduction. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone who has taken time off your work to attend this session. Hope to keep it as interactive as possible and also get to the questions. Our agenda for today is the following. We're going to touch upon drivers in the insurance industry. We're going to talk a bit about what customers want. We're going to talk about conversational design and AI. We're going to be reviewing the landscape of bots, whether those are chat bots or voice bots. We'll be looking at bot anatomy. We'll be talking a bit about why we need natural language processing in order for conversational AI to fulfill its promise. We'll touch upon a minimal viable product, an MVP for NLP and conversations. And then we will touch upon some best practices towards the end and then go to questions. We also have 3 polls. This is the first poll. And if you don't mind answering this, the question is, are you using in your company any of or all of the following? Voice bots, chat bots, live agents, which is humans driving conversations, or a combination of A, B, and C. You have about 45 seconds, please. Thank you for that. Let's take a look at the results. So we have a combination of A, B, and C at 46.7%, almost getting close to 50%. That's awesome. Live agents slightly above 50% and chatbots at about 13.3%. Interesting that we do not have any for voice bots, but we will touch upon that and hopefully you'll find some of those insights valuable. Thank you. So what are the drivers in insurance today? So I kind of break them up into two categories. One is customer preferences. Customers have choices today, not just in terms of who they go with as a carrier, but also large number of choices in terms of devices and technologies and channels. Customers have expectations. They want a conversation to lead to something that helps them out. They want to be less frustrated at the end of the conversation as opposed to the opposite. And more importantly, they want a personalized experience, not just a one-size-fits-all conversation. There are also macro trends that are in effect. One of the key macro trends is going beyond multi-channel, and multi-channel being defined here as having a multiplicity of channels available to the customer, not just an email inbox, not just ability for people to call into a call center, but also leveraging chatbots, voice bots, tracking sentiment and feedback on social media, and so on and so forth. But the key thing over here to understand is in order to deliver a superior customer experience, just multi-channel is not enough. In fact, it has to go beyond multi-channel into omni-channel. And what I mean by omni-channel is still providing these multiple ways for us to interact with our customers and vice versa, but also making sure that that interaction happens across these channels in a seamless fashion. It means not just being able to identify the customer, for example, starting with a chat bot, going into a voice bot or a live agent, but also carrying forward the conversation. I'm sure, like me, several of you have had experiences in specific scenarios where you get on a bot, a chat bot, you start a conversation, you then go to a voice bot, and then you go and actually contact a live agent on chat or voice, and you find yourself repeating yourself all over again. And that does cause a bit of a challenge. And creating an omnichannel experience from the get-go is definitely much more positive and leads to higher levels of customer satisfaction and happiness. The experience outside of insurance with verticals such as banking and retail are also pretty significant in that our customers' experience outside of insurance is definitely driven by trends, and it makes sense for us to leverage those trends and to create and meet the level of expectations that customers today have. In this era of COVID-19, we have to think about black swans and new normals. And we can talk about this in the Q&A, but there are examples where these new normals mean new customer behaviors, and new customer behaviors also generate new data. What do customers want from a conversational experience? The reason that customers call into or start a chat is primarily to get a problem resolved. So resolution is extremely important. They want responsiveness and they want follow-up. If we are not able to do something, then it makes sense to follow up with them through one of the most appropriate channels and their preferences and get back to them on the question they asked about. They also want an acknowledgement. In some cases, especially with chat and voice bots, it may not always be possible for us to provide an exact answer. If that is the case, we should be able to provide a failback mechanism where we at least acknowledge the issue and then follow up appropriately. They are looking for reduced barriers to usage. The reason customers use these kind of channels is because they want to leverage the new channels that are available. They want it to be smoother, and they want to enjoy a superior digital experience. Simplicity is still the name of the game when it comes to the customer interface, even if what is happening internally is pretty complex. So we have to do the right amount of complexity on the back end to ensure simplicity and usability on the front end. Timeliness is important, as is empathy, as part of this whole equation, and we'll touch upon this more later in the presentation. What is conversational design and what is conversational AI? So conversational AI are really a set of technologies that enable computers to simulate real conversations and also, importantly, interact with humans and with other machines. There have been many successes on conversational AI, but there have also been some spectacular misfires in the past years. Natural language processing is promising, rapidly evolving almost on a daily basis, and yet challenging. Natural language processing is defined as a combination of natural language understanding and natural language generation. And if you think about it, this is pretty much how humans communicate. When two individuals or a group have a conversation, it is typically driven by the use of language. It is driven by understanding what the other is saying or making sure that you are understood. And then the generation of language follows understanding. So when we take a look at NLP, it's a catch-all phrase for understanding as well as generation of natural language by a computer. At the same time, natural language processing is the holy grail of computing and human-computer interaction. Language is difficult to understand for machines. In some cases, it's even difficult for humans, as my daughter always keeps reminding me all the time when she says, "Dad, I really don't understand what you're saying." Now, it's also the ultimate proof point of Turing's test of what determines success in terms of a human-computer interaction. And most importantly, it's science and art working in tandem. Just touching upon bots over here. Bots are based on multiple types of bots. You can have business bots that focus mostly in the B2B space, or you can have consumer bots that focus in the B2C space. Bots can be generic, where they do multiple things across board, horizontal, so to speak, or they can be domain specific to the domain that we are working in or specific to the problem that we are trying to solve. Bots can also be personal bots, or they can be team bots, with the example of team bots being things like Slack bot and others. Bots can be text, they can be voice, or I would recommend that they be hybrid, a combination of text and voice. You can also have bots that are create net new services versus reskinning and providing a new interface for an existing channel. The application areas are in call centers, self-service through smart speakers, which we are seeing increasingly more of, chatbots, email, social media, and also in support and to augment what live agents do. The information that is provided or the interaction that is done by a bot can be directional, which allows someone to do something. It can be informational, or it can be workflow. And most commonly, what we are seeing increasingly is it's a combo of directional information and workflow. And the best bot allows you to do all three at the same time. The one recommendation I would have is develop a multi-bot strategy. One bot doesn't fit all needs. It doesn't mean you have to build all of them at the same time, but you can start small and you can expand your strategy to include other bots. The key thing when you do that is make sure that you leverage conversational scripts and dialogue flow across humans and bots and across bot types. Bots, like humans, have anatomy. The primary purpose of a bot is to recognize and help accomplish human intent. These anatomies are important, and they need to be designed proactively and more importantly, with user input and feedback. So things like alpha and beta testing are as relevant to bots as they are to other aspects of software development and human-computer interaction. The anatomical features of a bot, whether it's a voice bot or a chat bot, should include things such as branding from your organization, the personality of a bot, conversation management, which is all about onboarding, flow, feedback, error handling, help and support, and most importantly, handoffs. Context and memory. Your customers shouldn't have to repeat themselves over and over again. And context and memory are pretty challenging when in conversational AI, but with the availability of new NLP technologies such as the transformer architecture, these are becoming easier than before. Engagement methods, how do people want to start a conversation? Rich interactions based on various types of files or audios or images, document links, and so on and so forth. And the key thing while building your bot anatomy is don't treat NLP as an afterthought. Keep it front and center in how you will do it. Because what you will find as you have a bot working is that it's pretty challenging for you to just throw human horsepower at it to be able to do what you want. So starting small on NLP, as we'll discuss later, is perfectly fine. Not starting with NLP is just going to create more challenges down the line. So related to that is our next poll question. Do you currently use natural language processing in support of either your live agent or human agent and or your voice and chatbot solutions? You have about 30 seconds, please, to answer this. Okay. So we have yes at about 25% and no at 75%. So for those who are not using NLP today, and hopefully even for the folks who are, the rest of this presentation will hopefully add some additional insights to what the options are in front of you. Thank you. So what is NLP? The first thing to understand is conversations are natural language, whether they are done by a human or whether they are done by a bot. Natural language processing, as we discussed previously, a combination of natural language understanding and natural language generation, allows us to leverage technologies to do things that humans can't do as efficiently. For example, repetitive tasks or processing large amounts of information without cognitive overload, and so on and so forth. And more importantly, to use a phrase that I commonly use, they help us remove the robot out of the human so that humans can be humans. Superior customer experience requires NLP to be the other side of the coin of the conversational options that you're considering. NLP can be used to identify, manage, and enable things such as topic modeling, entity extraction, intent analysis, information retrieval, sentiment analysis, natural language generation, real-time translation, summarization, and then conversational flow and handoffs. Use NLP to increase business efficiencies. Very important need is also to aid the humans who are involved, not just the customers who are on one end of the conversation, but in case of live chats, the live agent who's on the other end, and also the analysts and the others who have to look at the data, and the conversational designers who have to update things to make conversations better over time. It definitely has an impact on increasing engagement and also generating new interactions. Because what I have seen from experience is, with a bot, like most other software user interfaces, and especially more so in a bot, if a customer has a bad experience, they may come back one more time. If they have a second bad experience, they're going to call in. They're not going to use a bot, whether it's a chat bot or a voice bot. Creating that superior experience keeps customers coming back. And also, more importantly, it allows us to generate new interactions that the designers may have not thought of previously, which I've seen often is the case. Machine learning and deep learning based natural language processing provides new life to old bots as well, and also adds years of life to new bots. Language is important. It's context driven, it's complex, and it's varied. Please consider slangs, emojis, word associations, domain specificity, and problem to be solved as part of things that can be done with NLP. And the other point to recognize is humans respond to other humans and to bots in fascinating and varied ways. How can we take advantage of and reconcile both? Machine learning and deep learning based NLP processes, whether they are deterministic, generative, and hybrid, all have substantial advantages, and new machine learning technologies, especially things such as transformer architectures, transfer learning, and adversarial machine learning, are providing new options for us to do things that couldn't have been thought of even, say, 3 years ago. Data availability and data cleansing are pretty important. AI, as it exists today, relies on data. And that data, when it comes out of a chatbot or a voice bot, certainly has some issues and has some necessary pre-processing steps, such as stemming and lemmatization and other things that need to be done in order for it to be successful. Data fidelity, a concept that I talk about pretty frequently in my books, which is opposed to data quality. That is, data fidelity is the quality of the data for that particular use. You don't need to sit and clean all the data, but you do need to focus on the cleanliness of the data, keeping the intended use case and the intended users in mind. And that's important because it allows us to move the needle from a data cleansing effort to success with natural language processing and conversational AI. Keep in mind that supervised machine learning is label intensive, and please build time and resources in your process to be able to do that. NLP also is use case driven, and the key thing is it is joined to analytics and BI at the hip. So what does an MVP look like when you have a chatbot or a voice bot in play? And while I have focused mostly on chatbots and voice bots in this presentation today, the MVP for the NLP that you look at over here is also applicable for things such as looking at email conversations and email requests that come in. It's also applicable for social media and so on and so forth. So this MVP would apply not just for bots, but across board where you have natural language and unstructured data. One of the key things I would recommend that people start with is topic modeling, primarily because it uses unsupervised machine learning and allows you to group terms either in a word cloud or visualization using things such as PyLDA-Viz to capture sets of words that are associated with topics. And then what comes out of it is topic themes from these combination of words, and allows you quickly to deploy either a human being or a bot on a specific web page or anywhere else as needed. The other thing that I would suggest, and this comes to more of supervised methods, though at Unum we are working on some unsupervised methods also in order to drive intent and entity analysis. What are intents and entities? They're fancy words, really. Intents are verbs. What actions does a customer want to perform? For example, apply. An entity is a product or a service or any other noun that the intent applies to. For example, in Unum's case, short-term disability insurance long-term disability, life, etc. It's important because it draws out the key semantic features of the request and helps you improve your scripts and your responses. And then most importantly is sentiment analysis, capturing the tone of the customer request from the word content. And these are typically associated with intents, entities, or topics to show patterns of positive or negative experience and the insights to both refine bot personas, scripts, and in certain cases, workflows. We will now come to our third poll question. Are you using cloud-based deployments for conversational AI and/or natural language processing? And you have three options here. Yes, you are. No, but you're planning to, or it just doesn't apply. And by cloud-based deployments, I'm talking about cloud services such as AWS, Amazon Web Services, the Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft's Azure, Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, etc. You have 30 seconds to respond to this. Thank you. Well, let's look at the results. Yes, at 16.7%, not yet, but planned at 25%. And there are several among our audience for whom this question doesn't apply. Thank you for your insights. So let's wrap this up by looking at some best practices. I'm breaking this down into two areas. One is conversational design, and the other is conversational AI, which includes NLP. From a design perspective, it's important for us to solve the customer's pain point, or at the very least, acknowledge it and follow up. Begin with well-researched requirements while also knowing that not everything will be known. So there's the concept of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And the requirements don't have to be perfect, but as long as you recognize the fact that it's agile, it's iterative, and it will change as you gather more data, especially coming out of NLP, that's important. Craft conversations that are intuitive and natural and that scale across device types. And this is particularly important because what you want to do is maximize your conversational design and flow and make it reusable across multiple contexts and multiple technologies and devices. Please keep in mind that one poorly handled error can outweigh dozens of successful interactions. So please focus on getting your users back on track quickly and seamlessly. There will be errors, but it's how we respond to the errors that are more important. Create purpose-specific bots and start small. Don't boil the ocean if you can help it. Define and reuse conversation scripts, handoff points, and actions between voice and chat bots. Also keep in mind, bots are humans too, especially in the eyes of human users. Manage bot personas continually and based on natural language processing. On the conversational AI side of the house, like on the design perspective, determine your NLP minimally viable product using the pointers that I mentioned earlier and be prepared to expand it over time. Leverage NLP for both conversational design and repair. Train your models using live chat data where possible, or if that's not possible, using institutional knowledge and documents. Data cleansing and data preparation are essential. Focus on value, not on algorithms, machine or deep learning, or charts. As I mentioned earlier, please connect your AI to BI. AI allows you to make things better and generate questions, and in some cases provides you answers. BI does a great job of providing answers. What has particularly worked well for me is when I'm able to connect these two and use the results of one to inform the other on a continual basis. Consider a hybrid approach. Automated machine learning is here to stay and is not here to take your job if you're a data scientist. Leverage the open source and data science NLP community. It's one of the friendliest communities in computer science that's out there. And also leverage products where they fit and where they may give you an acceleration. Finally, experiment with different algorithms and build time for iteration and improvement. So on that note, I hope you found this presentation to be useful. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do that. We'll now turn the floor over to questions.
Yes, thank you, Prashant, for such an amazing session. So we do have quite a few questions here. So number one, we struggle with considering bots versus portal for sharing information, as there is a preconception that a bot will lead to the need for a live agent. Can you suggest ways to overcome this preconceived notion?
Yeah, one way I would suggest is that's a good question, by the way. One way I would suggest is look at the use case in mind. So it is not necessary that a bot will lead to a live agent. You can have bots such as FAQ bots, frequently asked questions bots, and informational bots that use your existing content and that work well with your portal in conjunction to provide answers. You can also use them to generate workflows, for example. So depending on the problem you're trying to solve, every voice bot or chat bot doesn't necessarily need to go to a live agent. If you keep in mind, I said there are typically three ways of looking at it. There is directional, there's informational, and there's workflow. Directional and interactional bots are where you do want the option of a live agent. Informational and workflow, typically you don't.
Thank you for that, Prashant. So question number two, in what aspects of bot development, data science and AI play important roles outside of NLP? Also, it would be great to understand a few best practices to going about mining and training aspects related to intent and entity identification.
That's, again, lots of questions there. So I am not sure if I can answer all of them, just to give the chance for others to ask questions, but I'll come back to this if I don't answer everything, if time permits. So the first question was, what other aspects can we use machine deep learning and AI beyond NLP? One of the things that it plays a pretty important role is predictions. So volume forecasting, for example, is a great use case where you take a look at the data that is coming in and use that to forecast the volumes to manage your capacity or to manage how and at what times you want your capacity to be available. The seasonality aspect of things and so on and so forth are all good examples of where I've used volume forecasting in the past in addition to NLP. And then the other question, I think, was some best practices on entity and intents. What has typically worked well for me is using a combination of product and custom code. And when I mean by custom code, typically using multiple algorithms and not just one. And also considering using ensembles rather than any one best algorithm. Ensembles tend to do better. The third thing over here is looking at the various techniques and the Python and NLP libraries that are available out there, maybe R2, in terms of pre-processing the data and managing the data. Again, I'm not sure if I answered all of the questions. Is there anything else that I didn't touch upon, Maisa?
I think you touched on all of the aspects here. There was also about mining and training aspects related to intent and entity identification, like best practices. Yeah. I think
I
you
would say the
covered.
best practice number one is make sure you have access to labeling resources who can do labeling so that you're not
Mhm.
having your data scientists do labeling for you. Not because data scientists can't do it. It's just because I think you can still make progress on the data science aspect of it while still doing labeling. When you're doing labeling, look beyond Excel. Don't just look at Excel to label things. Look at some of the labeling tools that are available out there, and there's quite a bit out there. And also take advantages of the newer technologies that are coming out, especially from cloud vendors, in terms of taking the existing institutional knowledge and using that to create labels and then supplementing that with human firepower as needed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so and I have another 3-level question here. Maybe we'll go in parts, right? For the first level here is, in your organization, do you consider bots as a model?
Do we consider bots as a model? So I'm guessing. So, okay, so I think I understand the question. So again, I'm not going to speak for my organization because it's a large organization with multiple perspectives. I'm going to speak for myself when I say this. Bots are bots. Models are models. So again, this is just one person's opinion, my opinion. I see bots as really interaction agents. I see NLP models as being related, connected at the hip, but still separate. So you can still have a bot without developing an NLP model. I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to make life more challenging for you. If not in the short term, definitely in the mid and long term, but I would separate those personally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then the follow-up to that is, does your firm require validation of bots? And if so, how's the validation done on high level?
That really depends on what kind of a bot you're using and where you're using it. If it's an informational bot or an FAQ bot, then I would say, you probably don't need to use validation over there, because what you want to do is give people the information that they want and go on from there. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there'll be certain scenarios, for example, especially related to workflows, which cannot be started off from an informational context. You do need the customer identity or the sensitive information that the bot is supposed to answer, the chat bot or the voice bot, in which case you would use your standard access authorization IAM in order to then provide access to that bot inside a logged in context. And that would apply inside a portal where you have logged in. It could be a web application that has been authenticated, and so on and so forth. So it's not a one size fits all answer as much as what do you want to do and how do you want to support the customer and what kind of information you want to serve and what are the sensitivity and privacy aspects of it.
Okay, thank you. We do have a few more questions, and I think we still have time. So let me ask you one. What are your top tips for building scalable operating models?
The number one tip would be do it as a cross-functional effort that brings together the customer, your business users, the people who are responsible for the business and the operations of your call center or customer journeys, and also a combination of conversational designers, data scientists, data analysts / engineers, BI folks, and also if you're on the cloud operations engineers or their equivalent in an on-premise setting. So the advantage is to do it with as broad. It does take a village for us to be successful with conversational AI. And it's also important to bring that buy-in and that shared success together right from the outset. This should not be seen as any one team's responsibility. It is a team effort. and it requires that level of collaboration.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. So what challenges did you experience when implementing machine learning and deep learning to personalize each customer experience, and how did you overcome these obstacles?
Oh, that's a great question. It really depends on the type of the question that we were trying to answer and the level of personalization that was required. In some cases, and this is not necessarily with my current employer, but from one of my past lives, one of the challenges was trying to figure out where personalization applies and where personalization doesn't apply. So, for example, if what we are trying to do is an informational bot, then I would say personalization applies less, because the purpose of what we are trying to do there is to serve up information. And in order for that bot to be successful, you're trying to serve up a common base of knowledge to as broad an audience as possible. It doesn't mean personalization doesn't apply at all, because you may find over experience as you have these conversations that there are reasons to personalize it and there are opportunities to personalize it. Where personalization matters more, in my opinion, is when you have both access to the customer profile and you're trying to do something with a product or a service, and you're trying to make sure that the product or the service or the answer that you're providing matches that particular customer's question, profile, and needs. So making that distinction of this and coming up with a multi-bot strategy was probably one of the first challenges I ran into this space when I started doing this a few years ago. And that is what kind of led to one of the best practices I spoke about earlier in using a multi-bot strategy and recognizing that across chat and voice bots, there are different types of bots and different levels of personalization that would be required. Also, keep in mind, in some cases, people don't want it to be personalized. They don't want to provide information. All they want to do is they want to get to a portal, they want the answers, and they want to go back to things. So reducing the number of steps, understanding where personalization applies and doesn't apply is, I think, as important as opposed to taking a one-size-fits-all approach.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Prashant, for such an insightful session and for responding all of these questions. And to our audience, I'm sure that if you have any further questions, Prashant will be happy to connect on LinkedIn. Now, thank you, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.